Let's talk about a few things. Let's talk about Hebrew Israelites. Let's see who comes on right now. Having a conversation with a self-proclaimed Hebrew Israelite. I put it in quotation marks to show that it's not literal. Who wants to talk about Christians? If y'all know, I'm not a Christian. Um, I do think that Christianity has better values than Hebrew Israelism, and constantly get into these disputes, even though I'm not even a Christian, with Hebrew Israelites that always want to mention that there are way more Christians that have done things that are bad than Hebrew Israelites. What numbers are we using? How are we comparing these things? Because if you look at the law of large numbers, it will show you that when you have a larger sample size, you're going to have more accurate results. You're going to have a higher percentage, um, a larger number. Just like if you have a person that takes a certain amount of at bats on a baseball game, they're going to have more numbers in everything. More at bats equals more strikeouts, equals more home runs, equals more base hits. It should equal more everything. Just like if you have a higher population of Christians, which is what we have in these United States, there's about 200 million Christians. That's a low ball number. When you have 200 million people, so you have that large sample size, you're going to have a higher number of cases of Christians that do things that they're not supposed to be doing, from aggravated assault to domestic violence to all types of stuff that I probably can't even say because they're going to flag my account for certain things. So let's keep it PG-13. But thank y'all for coming through San Miguel TV. I'm trying to get a Hebrew Israelite to come on. We'll see how that happens, how that works out, because they can be on a Facebook group commenting for hours, and then as soon as you mention let's go live, the conversation is over. It happens every time. It always fails, or it never ceases to fail. I mean, you have a conversation that goes on for hours on Facebook, right? I'm here at work, finding a little bit of time here and there to respond to these comments about how Christians have done this and Christians have done that. Then I have to, stop and do this and comment. And I'm tired of the Facebook comments. You don't get the same um, type of result as to where you're talking to someone live. And we can bounce these topics back and forth off of each other, because it seems that people are always talking around each other and they don't even understand what the topic is. I posted a story of Joey Morgan, and how once I brought this conversation up in a comment section on the Dismantling Hebrew Israelism Facebook group, all of a sudden the comments just disappeared. And you were unable to comment any longer on this Facebook post after I started bringing up Joy Morgan. Now, is it related? It seems like it is, but I'm not completely sure. Even though I was going back and forth with the actual person that posted the post about, I don't even know what that post was about, IUIC. IUIC is a Hebrew Israelite cult called Israel United in Christ, which is ran by Nathaniel, a former NYPD detective that was in the ISUPK back in the 90s when it was called the Israeli School of Universal Practical Knowledge. These are Hebrew Israelite cults, religious cults, hate groups, black nationalist groups also, that have more of a militant way of behaving, and very aggressive on the streets. They're constantly bringing up things like slavery and the transatlantic slavery. And they always want to talk about white people doing this and Christians doing that, when we know we have a larger sample size of Christians in this country. So this is just bad math. by Hebrew Israelites. I want to bring up all these other stories. Every time we bring up Joy Morgan, a sister that was murdered, an IUIC sister or member that was murdered by another member. So these are people in the same cult or the same religious group that are basically, um, committing violence, that committing violence against each other. It's it's usually how it happens. Things happen intra racially. Things happen within your group, within your neighborhood, obviously within your own race. All those things. This is how crime usually works everywhere you go. In the United States, we have a unique situation where we have all types of ethnicities and races scattered all abroad. And this gives us a good way of separating statistics and all of that. And we can see how it all goes down in the same country. If you have more white people in a country like we do in the United States, we have more white people than black people, 5 times, 5.5 or 5.6 times more white people than black people. What you're going to have is, so what you're supposed to have, and it's not true in cases of homicide and other cases and other types of crime. What you should have is with the raw number, meaning the actual number of incidents, it should be higher amongst white people than they are for black people. It should be 5 times higher. If you look at just looking at sample sizes, just looking at the large number that we see, or the numbers or the population size that we see. There are other variables like living in a highly populated area. It's going to cause more crimes, even if not even just by the numbers, raw numbers itself. You're going to have a higher rate of crime because higher populations causes more anonymity, which in that case criminals feel that they can get away with things easier if there are more people around. If there are less people, it's harder to hide amongst other people, which is what the word anonymity is talking about. Being able to be anonymous, which means that you have so many people that you can kind of hide in the crowd. But if there's a small population, it's harder to hide because there's less people. So there's a lot of things that need to be pointed out before we start talking about the issues with statistics of crime in this country. So all those variables need to be pointed out. People want to also bring up poverty as an issue, as if poverty causes crime, and poverty doesn't necessarily cause crime. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you're going to have lower moral values. You can be a perfectly decent person with great values and be dirt poor. That's why you have to understand the difference between absolute poverty and relative poverty. It's just basic things that you need to learn before you start talking about poverty causes crime without understanding what the hell you're talking about. So all of this, I mean, listen, when it comes to math, all these numbers play a part in understanding the bigger picture. We have more Hebrew Israelites, or we have less Hebrew Israelites than we have Christians worldwide. But just sticking to America, just this country, we have more Christians than any other religious group. 62% of the population identifies as some type of Christian. They're not all the same because you're going to have Mormons, you're going to have Catholics, you're going to have all these different groups, Protestants, Episcopalians. You're going to have different types of Christians. But 62% of people in this country identify as Christian, which works out to about 200 million Christians minimum. 200 to 300 million Christians, I believe, was the number I saw, which I checked this morning. I was going back and forth with a Hebrew Israelite on a Facebook group, which is where I try to talk about these conversations, because it's hard to find somebody to just come on your live stream if you're not already engaging with a conversation with somebody, which is what I was doing this morning. I'm waiting on this gentleman to come through. He didn't agree, but he was messaging me for hours about these different crimes that take place within the Hebrew Israelite community and the Christian, community. I'm neither a Hebrew Israelite. I'm a former Hebrew Israelite and a former Christian. I'm neither a Christian or a Hebrew Israelite. I have no dog in the race. I'm here to just be honest with you about what I see going on in this country from what I've seen and experienced as a former Hebrew Israelite and former Christian. Hebrew Israelites are way more aggressive and way more violent than Christians are. There are instances that don't go reported. There's instances that go unreported of Hebrew Israelites that do things within the church, like domestic violence cases. They go unreported to the authorities because Hebrew Israelites, a black nationalist group, these are black nationalist groups that don't believe in involving the white man into their business, into their situation. Pretty much they don't want to report things because they feel that they're already being oppressed by white people, and then bringing the cops into a situation is going to make the situation worse. And that's completely ignorant. Hebrew Israelites are just usually not intelligent people. It took me a few years just to realize that the people I'm surrounded by in this group, the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ, the majority of the people in the group are not intelligent. There are very few people that actually come in that are pretty intelligent, and they figure their way out once they realize that they're being misled and that they're involved in a black nationalist hate group, aka also an identity cult, also a doomsday cult. I'm going to be doing more videos on the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ. That's what I've been doing. I started this channel in March of 2017, exposing a Hebrew Israelite group called the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ. One second. So here I go. So I'm waiting to see if this Hebrew Israelite brother, will join my live stream, because he's been messaging me all morning relentlessly. And when I asked him to join a live stream, all of a sudden the comments stopped. Because he was misunderstanding what I was saying about something called the law of large numbers. When you have a larger sample size, you're going to have more accurate results as to where you have more Christians in America than Hebrew Israelites. You're not really going to have a good amount of numbers or results of what's really going on in the Hebrew Israelite community. You're not going to really understand very well what's happening, because you have such a small number, and then you also have things that go unreported in these cults. The Christians in this country make up 62% of the country, 60 to 65%, let's say. 200 to 300 million people in the country identify as Christian. You're going to have more instances where Christians are going to be doing something that they ought not be doing, all different types of crimes, and you're going to see that get reported, especially when it comes to things that are done against certain members. These people need to be exposed. In a cult, they don't like to expose their very members. They don't like to expose their own members. They like to hide the things that are being done because it gives their cult, their group, a bad name. But yeah, here we go, man. I see some messages. What's good? Heedy 5K, Pierce H. Um, let's give the video a thumbs up. Like and subscribe. as they usually say. Yeah, so we're here just talking about Hebrew Israelites, man, and I'm constantly going back and forth. Um, just the math skills suck. Horrible. I mean, these people must have not passed seventh grade math because I mean, even before that, once you start going into percentages, then you really confuse these people. And forget it. If you start talking about the rate at which something is happening, or the rate at which you'll find a Christian, I mean, if you have 62, let's give a rounder number. 60% are Christian. That means that 6 out of 10 people that you come across in this country are going to be Christian. 6 out of 10. We don't even have the number for Hebrew Israelites. We don't even have that number. It's probably somewhere at like 1% of the population. Like one, or not even, it's going to be a Hebrew Israelite. So there's like 60 times more or more Christians, because this is percentages. This doesn't work the same way as when you're just looking at raw numbers. Let's say there's 100. Let's say there's 200,000 Hebrew Israelites. That is like 200 to 500 times less Hebrew Israelites than there are Christians. I haven't really done the math, but it's very disproportionate. I'm sick of all the antichrist Jews and Muslims. These Hebrew Israelites are really disgusting. And they know that there's so many more Christians in this country, so they like to bring up all these instances. Like anytime you bring up anything that a Hebrew Israelite has done, like for instance in London, there was a member of Israel United in Christ. That's the purple Hebrew Israelite cult. They like to wear purple. You know, Israel United in Christ is an organization started in 2003 in the United States, and they ventured out to different countries. They're out in the UK, in London, England. In North London, there was a sister named Joy Morgan who was actually murdered by a member of IUIC. She was a sister member of IUIC. A male member murdered her after offering her a ride, and she got in the vehicle. And I actually have a message that I screenshotted of a Hebrew Israelite saying that she should have never gotten in the car. And this is a way to blame the victim. You're blaming the victim now, as if her getting in the car was such a great sin, when all she wanted was a ride home, and she didn't know that the dude was gonna murder her, and he probably raped her. That's why he didn't want to tell them where the body was, because it probably would have showed certain foul play. But they eventually found the missing body, which was missing for, I think, over a year. And by then, you can't tell so much. It was very much decomposed. Yeah, Hebrew Israelites, anytime you criticize something dealing with Hebrew Israelites, they want to throw it onto Christians right away, as if I'm a Christian, and I'm not. But I will defend a Christian. I will defend Christianity if I have to against a Hebrew Israelite. That because it's very easy to do. You have millions, hundreds of millions of Christians that all they do is be good citizens, and they contribute to society, and they're not out here trying to disrupt the natural way of life here in this country. Just living in society, worshiping your God, going to church every Sunday. You got Hebrew Israelites showing up at the front of churches with a loudspeaker and a microphone, blasting the front of the church trying to do First Amendment auditing type stuff. With what where they post up like on the sidewalk, which is public sidewalk. They have the right to be on a public sidewalk, but they choose a public sidewalk that's right in front of a Christian church, and they'll blast the church, loud, whatever, if disrupting their service, all that stuff. But let somebody do that to a Hebrew Israelite, and they're going to say that they're being persecuted, and that all of that just confirms that they are the true Israelites, because look, people are coming out and disrupting our service. I'm about to start doing that. I'm about to start finding Hebrew Israelites and start popping up at their locations. I know where IUIC is. I know where ICGJC is. Maybe I'll get a loudspeaker and a microphone and do the same thing they like to do. But yeah, you can't ever bring attention to some of the crimes in the Hebrew Israelite community, and I can point out so many. But yeah, Hebrew Israelites. It says attention seeking is all Hebrew Israelites do. False science, false theology, but aggressive membership. Yeah, very aggressive. Um, when it comes to somebody like myself who already knows the doctrine, they don't want to talk to you. They realize that, oh, this guy already knows all our tricks. We can't do anything against him. He's impenetrable. So let's go find somebody that's ignorant so we can indoctrinate them with, these false teachings. Yes, thank you, Abu. Welcome. Yeah, it started off in the Dismantling Hebrew Israelism Facebook group, which I'm constantly posting on, and I get a lot of responses on there. I get a lot of replies to my posts and my comments, but then when it comes time for me to do something live and bring them on to talk about these things, they want to hide. You have a lot of people that have fake accounts too. They don't seem too versed. These are like rookies, maybe. They don't seem well versed in their own doctrine. And when I start showing them that I know what I'm talking about, I'm a former Hebrew Israelite, they start to backpedal. They start to get scared. I was having a conversation for hours on the Facebook post. It was Facebook comments. I'm talking about, I will post a comment. I'm at work. I'll post a comment. Not even 2 minutes later, the guy's responding. So I'll respond. 2 minutes later, another response. So I'm like, hey, let's go live. Responses stop. All of a sudden, there's silence for the space of 20 years. Like no response. What happened? We were just talking about the law of large numbers. The law of large numbers is a mathematical theory that states that the larger quantity, the larger sample size that you have, you're going to have more accurate results. You're going to have also a larger sample of, let's say, we're talking about, oh, Christians commit more crimes. Okay, well, we have a lot of Christians. We have 200 million Christians in this country, minimum. 60% of the population, minimum, is Christian. They identify as Christian. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a large portion of the population be Christian that commit certain crimes, right? Well, let's apply this to a small sample size. You're going to have a small sample size of Hebrew Israelites, but I can still list a wide number of instances, violence, sexual assault, fraud, and all these different types of things that happen from Hebrew Israelites, and they claim to have better values. So none of this should be happening if you consider yourself a Hebrew Israelite. I mean, yeah, you're probably going to have a few numbers here and there, but if you are supposed to be the children of God, if you are supposed to be this holy people you're now coming back to your nationality, which is a misuse of that word, um, then you should have way less, um, a less rate of crime. It's hard to calculate these things, especially when you have Hebrew Israelites that have issues, crimes that go on. There's a story of domestic violence that I can tell you guys about in the ICGJC. There was a brother that was beating his wife. There was many. There was many. There's two instances I can think of. One in Miami, one in Orlando that come to mind right away, but there's more. There's a lot of this happening. It happens a lot in Islam too, with Muslim households, because it's allowed. It's similar because it's kind of allowed. These instances go unreported. They don't call the authorities. They feel they are the authority. So everything gets dealt within the church, and you never hear about these things. So you can never say, hey, Hebrew Israelites, here's a story of your guys beating on your wives and so and so. We can't even bring that up as much as we could with Christians, because Christians actually believe in the established society that we have, where you have to report the crimes to the authorities and they're going to handle it. No, you're going to have, I mean, there are churches that won't allow that. We have the story of the Baltimore Diocese Catholic Church. There's a history of all types of hidden crimes within Baltimore's Catholic Church back in 1979, I believe. They did a whole documentary on it. So that there's that. Hebrew Israelites have similar things already going on. You have the ICGJC that had all types, that I was a part of, had all types of issues, marital problems, situations where people are, you know, um, pretty much involved in abusive relationships, and it goes unreported. So now the authority that's dealing with these things are people that are not fit to lead, that are going to hide these things, and they're going to have their own form of punishment, and sometimes there is no punishment because the sister, in the case of Tazadakia, his wife was reporting abuse. Tazadakia's wife, Nisha Delgado, who his former wife or baby mom's, so-called wife, because in the cults and these Hebrew Israelite cults, if you lay down with somebody, that's technically your husband or your wife. Nisha Delgado was the wife of Tazadakia, the wife. Tazadakia is now passed, but before that, they were together, and he used to put his hands on her, according to multiple accounts and multiple stories that she's told, where he would even kick her, allegedly, according to her, and I believe her because we know his character. We have different stories of Tazadakia beating people up. Nobody was calling the cops saying, hey, I want to report assault and battery. Nobody was doing that. Hey, I have domestic violence. They weren't doing that. They weren't calling the police. They were going to the church. And even then, nothing was being done because the leader was the one that was doing these crimes. So it goes unreported. So you don't have an accurate number of instances where Hebrew Israelites are doing something evil. You don't even have an accurate number with Christians because there's no database that tracks, if you're a Christian doing a crime. They only track if you're a female, male, or if what your race is. So they only track gender, race. Sometimes they'll track income. I've seen, and that's about it. Age, also like, they track the age, but they don't track if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim. When it comes to crimes. Now, if it's regarding some terroristic attack, sometimes you'll have a database that includes a Christian terrorist or Islamic terrorism. You'll have that, and this is all very important to understand. If you want to understand, what's going on by gender, by race, by age in this country, you have those statistics. If you're trying to do that by religion, it's going to be very hard, very difficult for you to try to find these numbers. But you can only guess that because there's a larger sample size of Christians, that you're going to have more instances of Christians doing things than Hebrew Israelites. There's hundred times more, maybe 1,000 times more Christians than there are Hebrew Israelites. So what do you expect? You know what I mean? But yeah, cult's gonna cult. cults are going to be cults. The Hebrew Israelites are really new. So what can you really say, besides the fact that they're still up and coming? You're going to hear more stories as they grow. But yeah, you got the Epstein thing is like a cult. You have people that are sent to recruit other people to come in, and then they get blackmailed in a way where they can get exposed or whatever. In the form of a cult, they use the whole group against you, where you can have your whole family torn apart because they might make you look like an enemy when you do something that's against the cult. It might not even be something that's so evil. It just might be you exposing the cult. They're gonna try to get you. Gonna try to put your own family and friends and form, members, your peers against you. But yeah, there's cases of brothers in the Orlando church that were pretty much beating on their wives, and it went unreported. We knew because I was in the ranking structure, and this brother was a very low rank, and he was in my unit, and I was told this by some of the higher ranks, and I won't put out that brother's name because now he's out of the ICGJC, but some of y'all know who I'm talking about. It's not a mystery what was going on with certain brothers. And the brother in Miami that was beating his wife was named Law, and his wife's name was Sierra. And he was beating on her too, and she was underage. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on that I personally know about. Some of these people that call themselves Hebrew Israelites are not even part of a group, so they can't even speak intelligently about what's going on in some of these groups. But yeah, I mean, I got to close it off on that note. Thank y'all for coming through. This is only a short live stream, 30 minutes. I'm at work, so I got to get back to work. And we'll continue this another time. I'm trying to live stream this Saturday with the brother Willie, um, former ICGJC member, and we're going to talk about a few things. But yeah, thank y'all for coming through. San Miguel TV signing off. Make sure you give this video a like, so we can get the algorithm going. And catch me on the next one. All right, y'all. Peace.